Welcome to the Rock series. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more great content to come. So today we are going to take a quick field trip in Black history. And this trip is designed especially for the Black men and women who love to ride the fence. You know, you ones that are so hesitant and so careful about what you say and what you do in white America. You know, you Terry Crews, you Charles Barkleys. You know, you ones who don't have the courage or the guts to pick a side or a position and stand firm in it, regardless of the backlash you might receive. So you straddle and go back and forth just to make yourself look good when it's convenient for you. And I want to point out that this selfishness, this type of behavior is rooted in narcissism because these Black people care more about how they look to others versus the real issues at hand. And oftentimes their lack of empathy that is needed in the moment shows why we are so divided as is. They respond based on what they think others would want them to say, specifically white people. And in the process, not only do they selfishly push the agenda of Blacks back many years, they uplift their oppressors to make them look more justified, less wrong, more reasonable, and one step closer to being warranted to do what they have done. You see, if it's one thing that does not help any cause for Black people are the fence riders. They only take up space in this community. And in reality, I wouldn't even call them fence riders because when you fail to stand firm in your beliefs for the greater good of who you are, and even more importantly, the lineage of Black blood that runs through your veins, believe it or not, you have already chosen a side. Don't let that go over your head. You see, you cannot be a Black person living in this America and this world and not know your history, not know your past, especially in 2020. And so if it is safe to say that the majority, if not all of the Black people in the world right now know their history, then I can only think of two options that would explain why so many Black people ignorantly respond or react to discussions of the oppressions of Black people in the way in which they do. Either they are fence riders or they're brainwashed. It's simple. And before any of you began crying about why you even have to pick a side or why does it even matter? Why can't you just live in this peaceful world and everyone sing kumbaya with one another? Go tell that to the racist cops who we pay to protect our communities that have already picked a side. Go tell that to Donald Trump, who viciously race baited his entire term in office and has already picked a side. To community policeman George Zimmerman, who picked his side when he hunted and killed Trayvon Martin in cold blood. To the mortgage companies who would purposely not approve Black families for home loans in certain neighborhoods, who picked a side. To the Karens and Kens with amnesia who do not think before they speak and spew racism and hatred from their diseased mouths and pick sides. To the slave owners who picked their side and gave you your last name. And to the sick and disgusting alligator hunters who picked a side when they use little Black babies as bait for gators and picked their side. They have all picked a side. Now, unless you have been hiding under a rock, the unfortunate death of George Floyd has sparked many conversations within the nation today. And similar to the Quaker Oats and the Aunt Jemima brand, and if you have not watched my Aunt Jemima video, please be sure to check that out. Many companies and organizations are now attempting to rid themselves of this quote unquote horrific racist imagery that a lot of them represent. Now, you see, when you select anything for your brand, it represents you. Okay, it is who you are, whether that be a name, a image, a song, or a slogan. Companies invest millions into their brand because it is a representation of not only the product that they are selling, but more importantly, the image that they are selling. And so the fight song, aka the representation of one of the most widely recognized college teams in the South, the University of Florida, reeks of a horrendous past, one that will absolutely make you sick to your stomach.
Is say a little chant, but I need y'all help. Just need y'all help. Now, after I say the team, y'all say Gator Bait. Y'all got that? You gotta say it loud now. The only way it's gonna work if y'all say Gator Bait. But let me say these three signals first, and when I drop my hand, Y'all say it. If you ain't a gator, you must be gator bait. If you ain't a gator, you must be gator bait. You ain't a gator, you must be gator bait. Tennessee, LSU, Auburn Tigers.
So you just watched videos of the University of Florida's Gator Bait chant and former University of Florida safety Lawrence Wright speaking at the 1996 National Championship celebration. Wright was the winner of the Jim Thorpe Award and had the entire stadium cheering the phrase as he listed off teams that the Gators had beat that season. Wright is thought to have coined the Gator chant, although he did not have any knowledge of the history at the time behind the meaning of Gator Bait. Okay. Now, before I go any further, for anyone questioning this, gator bait was a real thing. Black babies were really used as bait to reel in alligators for profit. And it has been pretty well documented that during slavery and into the 20th century, black babies were used as alligator bait in North and Central Florida. The profit-seeking white hunters in the Deep South used black slave babies to lure alligators out of the swamps to be killed so that their skins could be harvested. You see, during slavery and in the Jim Crow era in the United States, African Americans were brutalized and mistreated in almost every way imaginable. If there was a way to kill, maim, oppress, or use an African American for any reason, it more than likely happened. The intent since the beginning of slavery was to dehumanize and terrorize Black Americans. Once they were reduced to a less than human caricature, it was easier to justify lynching and wholesale murder. Now, let's get clear on this. It is not happenstance that gator baiting took place in North and Central Florida and that the University of Florida is in Gainesville. Gainesville, Florida is considered to be North Florida. Therefore, the culture of the phrase gator bait is something that people in this area evidently felt comfortable enough using and talking about. Enough at least to where it could have found its way in the vocabularies of college students in the early 1990s. Now, my issue with top flight gator coon Lawrence Wright is that once his alma mater came out with a statement that they would be getting rid of this chant due to its racial background, and then subsequent news about the history of gator bait was released, this is what he had to say when interviewed.
There was clearly nothing racial when you made the chant, but do you understand why people would, find it racist from way back that, the racist terminology and what it meant?
Well, let's. I'm gonna help people along that try to understand things uh, in a way. Let's be realistic. If you go and look at that part of it, the slave masters own the babies. So that if you own something, you can do whatever you want to do with it. Was it wrong? Yes, very wrong to do something uh, like that. That was very cowardly. That wasn't very loving. It wasn't very kind. What we're saying in our description, we're saying, hey, whoever is not for the University of Florida, the Gator Nation, is Gator bait in any capacity. As in, if we have a debate, our debate team is debating against another university, because we're only talking about collegiate things, you know, is Gator bait. And if it's the school, the name of the school, we describe it like Florida State. We'll say Gator bait. So we're being descriptive in our delivery who we're talking about. So how would you come past that point? You make up something that don't mean the same thing in an English language. That's impossible, especially for an educator. I was like, hold on. Yeah, I understand that happened in a time that was far from where we are now, but we're not doing that.
Far from where we are now, yet Black people are being killed every day. Okay, so yeah, let's be realistic, Lawrence. I think this interview showed not only how ignorant you are, but why many Black athletes need to be reassessing what colleges that they are going to. Black athletes need to be attending HBCUs because clearly Clearly, going to white colleges are not benefiting us at all. Okay. You see, when I stated fence riders selfishly pushed the agenda of blacks back many years, I didn't just make that up. That's facts. You can't say on one hand, well, I think it's wrong. It's bad. It shouldn't have been done. But then on the other hand, say, well, these slave owners owned these babies so they could do whatever they wanted to do with them. What? Uplifting your oppressor to make them look more justified, less wrong, more reasonable, and one step closer to being warranted to do what they have done. Lawrence Wright, you are a black man being informed about the history of your people, and you respond by giving an explanation as to what the chant was initially created for. We know what the chant was for. But when you are asked, do you understand why so many people are concerned now, especially given what the phrase meant? And this is what you say. This is how you respond. Given your opportunity to use your platform, this is how you respond. And I did not hear this man take a stance, a firm stance. I did not hear him stand 10 toes down in what he truly believed. All I heard was straddling. All I heard was fence riding. And the fact that he failed to say that he supported the University of Florida's decision in getting rid of it. Because now that all of the facts are out, now that everyone clearly knows the history of this, he cannot support it. He cannot stand by it because it is absolutely wrong. And so I personally think that Lawrence Wright is more concerned about his legacy of creating the chant versus being a black man who just found out that a chant, a phrase that he has been using for the majority of his life, has everything to do with black slave babies being slaughtered, taken from their homes, stolen and put in baskets to be used as bait, killed for monetary gain, or the same people that enslaved his lineage. Come on. Narcissism. I mean, am I missing something here? Black people like this should really be ashamed. Really ashamed. You see, picking a side has nothing to do with white versus blacks. Picking a side has everything to do with right versus wrong. And you know what? This is wrong. This is wrong.
Been collecting for quite a few years, and I have the posters and things like that about different things. And then one day I was down in Florida. I'd gone down with my wife, and I took a trip for myself off to the Wild Blue Yonder, going out to hunt artifacts. And in my quest to hunt artifacts, I came upon a pawn shop in Sanford, Florida. In the pawn shop was a gentleman who owned it. They went and got him and told him I was there, and I wanted to buy some of the shackles he had hanging around the walls. I asked him, could I buy them? He said no. He didn't want to sell anything. He just wanted me to see it. Then we began to talk. And I asked him, I said, look, please let me buy something. I got to take something from here. He says, no. He says, I don't want to sell anything. He said, but I'm going to the back and I'll sit down. Meanwhile, he came out and came back out and he began to talk to me. He said, you know, he said, you probably don't know this. He said, but years ago, he said, my grandfather, before he died, told me of the things they would do. He said he would go down. He said his grandfather said they would go down and they would take babies with them. I said, what do you mean babies? He says, well, let me tell you. He said the slaves who had babies, they would steal the babies during the course of the day, sometimes when the mothers weren't washing. I said, what do you mean babies? I said, you mean babies like 5 or 6 years old? He says, no. These babies, some would be infants. Some would be a year old. He said some would be toddlers. He said they would grab these children and take them down to the swamp and leave them in pens like little chicken coops. They would go down there at night, take these babies and tie them up because they hunted the big bull alligators. These big bull alligators were not raised on the farms. They were in the wild. These alligators would weigh 600, 700, 800 pounds. Those are the ones they wanted. They would skin them, make the wallets, get the meat, do different things with them. He said, but what they were doing was tie them up, put a rope around their neck and around their torso, around here, and tie it tight. He said, I said, well, what would the babies be doing? He said, well, my grandfather said they'd be screaming. He said, what would you do? He said, just let them scream. He said, what they would do, it would help them to chum the water. He said, when they would throw the babies in tied to this rope, he said, in a matter of minutes, he said, the alligators were on them. He said the alligators would clamp his jaws on that child. As a matter of fact, once he clamped on him, he was really swallowed. You couldn't see anything but the rope. And we would pull the alligator in and tie his nose and hit him in the head with an axe, a pickaxe. He said we would then drag him to the shore. We'd drag him to the shore and leave him lay, and we would do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times a night. I said, so what do you mean? He said, well, yeah, they were taking these babies and killing them for alligator bait. I said, so all these things I've been collecting, are really, really something that I can really talk about and say they're of a truth by what you say? He said, I'm telling you, he said, nobody wants to talk about it. He said, I'm only telling you because you're here. I may never hear from you again. He said, but these things actually depict the acts that they did to slave babies back in the Bayou country and down the south. They did this. They hunted alligators with these babies. That's why they call alligator bait.
That's why they are called alligator bait. And in the words of the writer Harriet Ann Jacobs, I forgot that in the land of my birth, the shadows are too dense for light to penetrate. Until next time.